This is a live presentation of the Titan Upload Network.
Happy holidays to everyone. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you as always for joining us on this Monday evening. And the losing streak continues. The Tennessee Titans blow it at the end, basically giving the Houston Texans a big upset win, putting the losing streak now at 5. And there's just, once again, a show where we come in with just a lot of disappointment, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger. And really, it's trying to find any kind of source that we can direct it to and just channel that anger and try and find a reason why this team is slumped. I mean, do we point at injuries? Do we point at coaching? Do we point at players not making plays? Do we point at the fact that there's not enough playmakers on this team? I mean, it's basically just a buffet of problems, and it's take your pick at this point. So we've got a lot to talk about tonight. There's a lot of questions going forward, especially with Thursday night's game with the Dallas Cowboys. Is it going to be important to rest players? Is it important to play them? Basically setting up for another week game in the division with the Jacksonville Jaguars, which could potentially seal one team's playoff fate. One will go home, one will move on and host a home game. That's a lot of questions to answer, and we're definitely going to get to that because we've got a lot to talk about tonight. But first, getting to our special guest tonight, of course, one of my favorite people to talk to on the show, a fine contributor from the site Titans Eyes, putting out some great articles and giving great stories, and really just one of my favorite people to talk to. Let's give it a power hour. Welcome to our show guest, Max Greenberg. Max.
What's up, everyone? How are we doing?
Max, as always, it's great to have you on the show. And as I was saying, it's a lot of questions that are going to be asked tonight. So much frustration. From your viewpoint of how everything's gone, realistically, is there any way the Titans can break out of this slump they're in?
This year, no chance. No chance. This year, even if we somehow, because Thursday night's going to be meaningless, of course, in terms of the standings. Even if we go into Jacksonville, we win that game, and then we somehow win a playoff. I think the absolute maximum ceiling for this team is divisional round. I don't even see that happening. I think pretty much any team I think we play in the wild card round, we're going to lose to, if that even happens, because we're just so injured right now. Todd Downing, all these issues. I don't see anything, and I've tried to be an optimist all year, all through the offseason. I thought, going into the year, if everything goes right here and there, I think this team could have a chance because, this team's always had that kind of swagger about them as, even if everyone counts us out, we can play up to our abilities as evidenced against games like the Ravens in 2019 playoffs, the Bills in 2020-21, the game against the Rams in 21. There's several other examples, but this year, this team just doesn't have it.
And Malik Willis, once again, stepping up for the injured Ryan Tannehill, and we'll have to wait to see if Tannehill can get healthy in time for a potential matchup with the Jaguars. But, it's a mixed bag with Malik. There are things he did well, and there's things that he still needs to improve on. Real quick, just from your viewpoint, what do you think were some of the things that Malik did well and a few things that he still needs to work on?
Well, I think certainly his decisiveness has gotten better throughout these games. I watched him in the very first game in the regular season that he played. I'm not really going to count the preseason games. Those don't really count much because you're obviously playing against practice squad teams, and it's not, of course, it's not real action. In the first game against the Texans, he definitely, I wouldn't say he looked slow, well, I guess he definitely did. But in terms of decision making, you can tell very much he had never played an NFL game before. And he threw a pick, and there was really nothing. We all knew what was going to happen. Like everyone, we knew he was raw. We knew he was a project. We knew he shouldn't take a snap this year. But going into that game against Kansas City, when he played, I thought he looked much more decisive on his throws. The stats won't tell you he was any better, if at all. But I definitely thought he looked more decisive. He certainly can run the football. I certainly think his escapability is there. I just think And from this past weekend, how much can we really judge? Because throwing the ball again, he threw for what 50 yards going into the final drive, maybe the final two drives, and again, but how much can we really judge? It's a super injured roster, horrible offensive coordinator, horrible offensive line to begin with, and that's injured, horrible receivers, and you put him out there in the 20-degree cold. I mean, what can you? It's hard to really say, how far he's really coming, because at least we know at least he's come farther than when he first started back in May, and he said, and we've seen it, how much he's improved since then, which obviously, but again, the learning curve for these quarterbacks is, especially in Malik's case, is you have to take, it's a lot of time to learn NFL football, and right now it just, especially from this Saturday's game, I don't know how much you can truly take away in terms of what we can really evaluate.
And, with the good and the bad, the defense continued to be a strength for most of the game, giving the offense endless opportunities. But realistically, at some point, scoring up to 14 or 17 points a game is just not going to get the job done. So realistically, what's been more hurtful? The fact that the defensive opportunities have been wasted, or the fact that Derrick Henry's been on a fumbling spree? So which do you think has more weight to it?
I think, honestly, if you would ask me, I think it's really the defense getting tired, because you're seeing, not just this year, but the year before, having to go out on the field all the time and bail out a terrible offense. They're doing everything they can, I think. But again, you're seeing they're getting injured too. They can only hold up. Christian Fulton and Monty Hooker out in the secondary. That hurts a lot. McCreary is your best corner, and he's a rookie. And there's only so much, the defense can really do. And I think we're starting to see just how tired they're getting. And I think you're seeing just about every, especially in these past weeks, every aspect of that defense is getting weaker as the season goes on. And with Derrick Henry's fumbling streak, it's just so bizarre that way, because when we talk about Derrick Henry coming to the year, we could talk about his physicality declining after the injury. We talk about his speed potentially declining after the injury. We never talked about his ball security declining. I just can't,
Yeah.
and I genuinely wish I had an answer for why he's fumbled in 4 of the past 5 games. I don't know why that's happened. I would honestly chalk, and I know it's not the best answer. If you would ask me, I'd chalk that up to maybe not so much bad luck, but just kind of a bad sequence of events that's happening. Because that's not like him. Anyone who's watched the Titans or Derrick Henry knows it's not like him to fumble the ball like that. He's usually so sure-handed, but now he's just dropping the football. I don't know what the issue is there, but I definitely think, going back to the defense, I just think they're getting tired.
And you can only ask a defense that's been giving an offense opportunities to go out and score points, but once again, they end up being stagnant or just non-effective in most of these games. But we'll definitely have to talk about that more in our next segment. But first, you can only talk so much Titans without basically wearing yourself out throughout the week. So, Max, of course, a lot of other great news going on in the NFL. So why don't we jump into that and clear our minds before we jump into the Titans talk?
Right.
So we'll jump right into it. Shout out to everybody in the chat, especially Lou, man. Good seeing you on the show, buddy. Love having you on there. Always giving us support. And, of course, bringing up a good point. Right now, Tennessee sitting at a 10 seed. They could be a 7, 6, or 4. So week 17 matters. And if they lose week 18, they could still get the 7th seed. And, there's a lot of complications there, Lou, man. I definitely know right now the Titans' best bet to get in the playoffs is just to beat Jacksonville straight out.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, really.
So
can I will say one more thing before going to the next segment? We're talking about potentially resting starters going into this game against the Cowboys, because it's essentially a meaningless game. Where I am at that is pretty much my opinion. No matter if you're rebuilding, no matter if you're competing for championships, no matter if it's a meaningless game. And I will say I definitely get certain situations where it's like week 18, you truly have nothing to play for. That's different. But especially in a game like this, your goal should every week should go out there to try and be 1-0. If your guys are too injured to play, then okay, that makes sense. But if they're clearly healthy, I think you got to play them. Like Kevin Byard said in his interview today, like no matter what happens, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to play. And so I hope everyone else who's healthy is out there and playing as well.
And I agree. I'm old school. You play to win the game. And
Yeah.
this is a matchup against the Cowboys in prime time. It's not like the Titans just ooze out primetime games. These are rare,
No.
and it's nice when they can actually come out and get a win on these.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be the last home game of the year. I mean, unless we make playoffs, but right now, anyone going to the game, season ticket holders like myself, should be preparing for this to be the last home game of the year.
And hopefully it'll be a game where it'll actually come down to us making plays on the offensive side of the ball. But shout out to Bradley Newberry for joining us on the chat. Comes down to week 18, of course. Titans and Jags for the fourth seed, so that'll be for all the marbles. And shout out, of course, to Fant Smith for joining us on the chat. We might beat Jacksonville if Vrabel is good with the chips down. And we'll see. I mean, right now.
And I'm not going to go too much into detail, but on Fant's comment, we usually, when Vrabel has 10 plus days to prepare, he's usually pretty good in those scenarios. That's been one of his strengths. So you never know.
And one more comment before we jump into our top news. Cowboys game is a good opportunity for Malik too. Game really does not matter. See what he can do.
Yeah.
And I mean, right now it's pride. These guys are tired of losing streaks wearing on guys in the locker room, on the coaches. They just want to get like some momentum going before heading to the last regular season game.
Yep.
So you've got to break that mindset. Games matter no matter what the premise is. It's prime time. It's the Cowboys. Everybody wants to beat the Cowboys.
Right. Everyone wants to beat the Cowboys. That team, if you don't love them, you hate them. So including myself.
Anytime you can play the Cowboys on national TV, in the limelight, it's worth trying.
And if you could beat them coming into this game, because they're going to come into this game probably thinking they're the much better team, which they are, but you never know if you can catch them napping. I'm not going to say I expect the Titans to win this game. In fact, I'm very scared of their defensive front versus ours. But again, you just never know what's going to happen in these games.
That's true, and it's going to be a game to definitely talk about in our final segment. But first, let's get ourselves just a little more out of the mindset of the Tennessee Titans for a few minutes and talk about some of the NFL going-ons. Let's jump into our top news segment. I'm Michael Bishop of the Power Hour, and let's get to it. And to start out, one of the biggest news stories right now, Zach Wilson is apparently finished up with the New York Jets. The Jets have moved him down pecking order in the roster. Mike White will more than likely finish out the season, with Joe Flacco being the backup. So, Max, realistically, the Jets have already made it clear they're going to move on. The Zach Wilson trade already looks to be a bust. I mean, what are we really going to remember Zach Wilson for with his time with the New York Jets?
Do you want to? So this is kind of, I wouldn't say messed up, but here's the thing. So remember early in the preseason when Zach Wilson played in that preseason game, he suffered that non-contact knee injury. We all thought he tore his ACL. He didn't, and we looked at that thinking at the time we're like, oh my goodness, that's so awful for his development. He's going to go into next year with all kinds of pressure. But in a weird way, maybe that that was truly a season-ending injury, that could have been the best thing for him, because now we're seeing right now he's terrible. He literally every quarterback that comes on the field is better than him. He misses everything he throws. At least next year, if he would have come up with that injury, he would have had another year. But again, you look at Chris Trevler, who's pretty much a nobody coming into that game, and then they're suddenly moving the ball downfield, and also just his attitude. After the game against the Patriots, I can't remember what week it was, but they asked him in the press conference, did you let the team down? He's like, no, I didn't. It's like it just shows you none of the traits you want to see in a quarterback, especially around that age, that experience. If you're coming in with this chip on your shoulder and attitude that I'm not the problem, you're not going to succeed, because especially like I said, for a young QB, you want to show coachability. You want to show that you're willing to learn and you're able to learn, and he hasn't really done that at all. And I know we make fun of the Jets, their long streak of quarterbacks, but I really, and slightly in the Jets' defense, I really do just believe that Zach Wilson is that bad. And now that he is he's not even, I don't know if you guys saw the tweets, he's not going to be active on game days right now. Mike White's going to be the starter. Joe Flacco's going to be the backup. He's going to be the QB3, not even dressed for these games. So I don't see at this point how you justify keeping him, and his career might just be over at this point. I mean, maybe he'll get a job as a backup sometime else. I don't know. I mean, he'll never live up to that expectation as a number 2 overall pick.
And all those are great points. And I mean, realistically, it all starts and ends with him. The spotlight's always going to be on the quarterback. It's a league driven by the quarterback. That's where it's going to basically go down to. And I mean, realistically, I've never seen a quarterback just go through such a spiral in one season.
Yeah.
And I mean, Sam Darnold was pretty bad with the Jets, but I mean, the fact that Zach Wilson just basically lost the entire locker room before the season even ended was just amazing to me at that point. So
with several weeks in the year, like all the way in November.
So realistically, I mean, it seems, as you said, the backup role seems to be in the cards for him. What team could potentially he land with if the Jets decide to cut him loose or potentially make a trade for him?
I don't think anyone's going to trade for him at this point. I don't see, unless it's like literally 1/7 rounder. I don't think anyone's going to part with a draft pick for him. I guess any team that doesn't have a backup, the Titans maybe. You never really know because, and we'll get into this later. But you don't know what the Titans are going to look like next year, what the backup situation is going to look like. I really don't know who would be in the running for him. I guess any team that, because I don't think, I guess put it this way, any team that needs like a reliable backup is not going to want Zach Wilson.
But do you think with the right coordinator that potentially there could be a turnaround for him? Somewhere where there's an offensive-minded coach with another offensive coordinator with a very good knack for actually getting the best out of quarterbacks.
I definitely think so. We see coaching makes a big difference. For example, in Baker Mayfield in these past few weeks, in the past year, he went on the Browns, which he injured his shoulder, so we can't really count that. But again, on the Panthers this year, they're a mess. He completely flamed out. Now that he's on the Rams with Sean McVay, who's a good coach, he's doing well. For Zach Wilson, I think a lot of it's going to come down to, it's going to take a lot of soul searching on his part to be able to find in him the quality of being able to be coached, being able to learn, put hours into studying, because especially as a quarterback, it's got to be somewhat your life to always be watching film, breaking down this and that, and you got to do whatever it takes to succeed. So I think it's a lot of it involved, but I think again, like you said, it all starts with him.
And Titan Fox bringing up the point that the Jets did in 1 year what took the Colts 4 years at the quarterback position.
Right. Yeah, I mean, but again, in the Jets' offense, you see a guy like Mike White going out there, and he looks like a stud. So it's definitely not just on the Jets at all.
And Bradley brings up a good point. The Vikings, the backup position there, I think that would actually be a good fit for him. Offensive-minded coach, good offensive coordinator.
Who is their backup? I actually don't even know who their backup is. I know Kellen Mond isn't working out with them at all.
That's actually a good question. I mean,
I don't know who their backup is.
And Titan Fox brings up another good coach. Pete Carroll might help him, starting as a backup. So
I mean, look what he did with Geno Smith.
That's true. And I mean, they might even stick with Geno Smith as a starter and having Wilson as a backup. I mean, that's not a bad situation for them.
I would agree.
And Lou Man says Cody. So I believe Cody is the backup over at Minnesota. So
Cody, who I don't know who that is, honestly. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Lou Man, I don't know what Lou Man's talking about here. I must admit.
I don't know either, but that's Jersey worthy.
I guess.
But Zach Wilson's definitely going to have to make some tough decisions going forward next year. Is his football career over? Well, really, that's in his hands. But at this point, if he's going to want to work his way back onto a roster, he's going to have to be a better teammate and an even better player going forward.
Absolutely. I mean, more so, the question is his career over? The question is, is the NFL for him? Is his current career for him? We're going to have to find that out.
And that's, of course, a question every player has to ask themselves going down that road.
Yep.
But speaking of going down some certain roads, it appears that Bill O'Brien might be interested in heading back to his home in New England, reuniting with Bill Belichick to potentially get their offense off the ground. So, Max, let's be honest. I mean, when Bill Belichick decided to name Matt Patricia the offensive coordinator, I just probably laughed harder than I should have because,
I don't even know
without
if you
even
can say
having any
that.
knowledge of an offense, the fact that Bill Belichick just thought his system in place was going to overcome all this, and the Patriots are basically just hanging on by a razor's edge at this point. So, realistically, does Bill O'Brien look like a shoe-in to return if he wants to move on from the college level?
I mean, I certainly think he would have the position if he wanted. I think anyone would be better than Matt Patricia. And it's honestly one of those things for the for Bill Belichick is like we know how great of a coach Bill Belichick is. He's got the Super Bowls, he's got the resume. No one's going to argue with that. But like when you put a guy like Matt Patricia as your offensive coordinator, it's just like, what are you doing? I don't. Is it a sign that maybe the game is really starting to pass Belichick by? You never know. But as far as Bill O'Brien goes, there as an offensive coordinator, I think really anyone beats Matt Patricia. Honestly,
And it's an interesting situation, the fact that O'Brien didn't get a lot of head coaching opportunities. Regardless of what happened with the Houston Texans, he could still coach at the college level. I mean, you look at what he did at Penn State, and, with his short stint there, how quickly he was able to turn them around. So I would have had to think at least one college team would have took a shot at him.
I personally am not too surprised he didn't get another job because with the way things ended in Houston, not just the fact that they were a bad team, but because everyone with the players like J.J. Watt apparently leading a revolt against him in practice. Like, and J.J. Watts, as we know, is one of the more mild mannered guys in the NFL. I mean, I definitely think for a guy like O'Brien, it was going to take some time to kind of reprove himself because he did make the playoffs in a few years with the Texans, and then we saw how poorly it ended. So, I mean, me personally, I'm not too surprised that he didn't get another job that quickly, but with if you can be back to offensive coordinator in the NFL, you never know. I mean, those opportunities could arise again.
And I mean, we'll just go on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being most likely, 1 being not very likely. How is your take on him making this reunion next year?
Wait, say that again.
On a scale 1 to 10, 1 being no, 10 being it's going to happen. How do you feel that Bill O'Brien? Do you feel that Bill O'Brien's basically going to make a return to New England on that scale?
I would give it a 7. I would give it a 7 because because I partly because I think I just can't imagine how they can justify Matt Patricia returning. But will Bill Belichick want to get rid of him? I don't know. I guess it comes down to that, or it could be someone else. It could be another guy at the offensive coordinator position. You never know, but I would give it a 7.
I'd go 8. I feel Belichick needs some familiarity in the lineup. I think Mac Jones needs somebody in the first place to help him develop, which we've seen a huge regression there. And Bill O'Brien has definitely worked well with Tom Brady. So I think bringing someone in the system that understands how to get the best out of a quarterback, which Bill O'Brien can, it's the best bet going forward for him because it seems like Nick Saban is definitely going to move forward going next year.
Yeah, and Belichick. Yeah, I think if anyone else is going to replace Patricia, I feel like it's likely to be someone like Bill O'Brien because Belichick, we know the kind of coach he's kind of like a my way or the highway approach, and he's going to get guys that he has relationships with. So most likely.
And shout out to Ryan Harris for joining us on the show. Check out the Jump Pass podcast. He put out a show last week. Fantastic listen if you haven't had a chance to. Guys getting back to work and putting in some pretty good effort. Titan Fox also asking, he's assuming the Nathaniel Hackett news is on the list as well. I promise you, Fox, it's coming.
Yeah.
Is it coming? That's the suspense of it. You just have to wait and see. But while we're waiting, it doesn't have to be a wait anymore as NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube have struck a deal. In 2023, the live streaming service will take over the popular NFL streaming service. So at this point, Max, do you think that this was the best deal going forward for the NFL and YouTube?
I definitely think it's going to be a good deal for them. I think especially nowadays, because so many people now use YouTube TV, I think that's going to be a huge plus for everyone, including myself, because I'm a YouTube TV guy. And last year I got Sunday Ticket because I was back at school. Here this year I didn't because I go to a lot of the games, but I definitely think it's a huge deal now because especially with how much YouTube TV is used, I think it's going to be a huge deal for everyone involved. I think it's going to overall do really well.
And one thing that I definitely talked to a few people about, and this is a big question going forward, do you think that it'll potentially take away from some people that do live watch parties? And I know it's been a question for a lot of people that do the live watch parties, but I wanted to hear your take on that. Do you think that that might actually be something that starts pulling away viewers?
In what sense exactly? Like, are you talking like, are you talking about how like it's going to be harder to view, or what exactly?
We'll say in the sense that basically we know that YouTube's going to put out a very affordable package in their first year because basically, like any streaming service getting anything big, they want people to get involved. They want them to jump into it. So let's say that they put out a pretty good package for the first 3 months and it entices people to like start watching on that format. So from your perspective, would you think anybody that hosts like a live watch party, which there's a lot of popular YouTubers that do, one of ours definitely being Titan Upload, do you think that that will draw viewers away in order to try that package out if it's affordable?
I honestly don't. I honestly don't 100% know. I think really the bottom line of all of this is like everyone wants to watch the NFL no matter what. So I think they're gonna find ways, and people love to watch the NFL together. So I mean, at least from a person like me, I do anything I can to watch these games. So I honestly don't think it will have a huge effect.
And I mean, in the comment section, it seems to be mixed. Boo antenna power from Lou Man. So Lou Man's going old school. I can understand that. Fox brings up that he spends about $300 a year on Sunday Ticket because he's a Titans fan in Jacksonville, Florida. Respect.
Oh, yeah.
So it's worth it to him. So respect on
Yep.
that. And Fan Smith says that they're going to have to be competitive. It's a different format and has to be appealing for the viewer to get there. And I mean, I think that they're going to make a nice package to start out for the year, kind of like basically what Prime did to get people interested in Thursday Night Football. The thing about YouTube is everybody's watching it, so it's easy to advertise. It's easy to get people's attention on it. I mean, if you start out, say, maybe about $9.99 a month included with maybe YouTube TV or YouTube Premium, I think that would definitely entice a few people to try it out, especially if it's on a 3-month trial.
Yep. I mean, I guess I guess I should realize that not everyone's as into these, into the NFL as I am, because personally, I know myself, I paid up for Amazon Prime, and of course last year I paid up for Sunday Ticket. I think a lot of it's just going to depend on like who the viewers are and how badly do people really want to watch these games.
And agree.
Because I can speak from my own experience, but I know that my own experience is not like everyone else's experience, because I'm a very avid fan, probably much more than the average.
And agreed. And Titan Fox brings up, depends on whether we can watch simultaneously on 2 devices, then it would be fine. He's a big fan of Titan Anderson and watches on his phone along with Sunday Ticket on his laptop. And shout out to TA as well. He always does great work on his live streams. I actually got to watch some of that Houston game while I was working, so shout out to him. But I definitely think some of us ask the question, will that make an impact on those streaming services and those live stream parties? But I know it's going to be things that we're going to have to try and find some kind of solution going forward next year.
Right.
I think it's a good thing that Sunday Ticket goes on YouTube. The NFL just shows that they're moving along with technology.
Yep.
So realistically,
especially if people have YouTube TV, I think it's a great thing.
It's a very good thing. But just hopefully it doesn't kick anybody out, especially a lot of the popular, content creators that do these live streaming parties. That's definitely going to be a question that's going to be asked for next season going forward. But of course, as of right now, Sunday Ticket finds its permanent home with YouTube. we'll see if everything works out going forward.
Yep, absolutely.
And of course, as I promised you, I won't leave you any further details of what happened yesterday. Nathaniel Hackett, of course, being chopped as the Denver Broncos have decided to move forward. Hackett wasn't hacking it at the professional level. So, Max, I'm sure it's not a big surprise, but realistically, the Denver Broncos just didn't seem like they had any choice going forward. So, where do they go from here?
Oh, man, I mean, well, in terms of Russell Wilson, they got no choice there because they signed him to a 5-year contract. They only can hope that he's gonna succeed. I mean, I, I guess they have to be thorough because it very much felt like this whole thing was a lot of a play to get Aaron Rodgers to join the Broncos because apparently they had a good relationship in Green Bay. That obviously didn't work out, and then they got Russell Wilson, and we've seen how that's gone. I mean, they just got pretty much they just got to get get the right coach and hope that it improves. But I don't know. Like that team has to. Either they're going to be do really well, or I think they're going to be doomed because with the current core players they have, at least the quarterback, they're stuck. And as you know, the quarterback takes up so much money, so it's all going to go through Russell Wilson. They don't really have a choice there because it's not even going to be a discussion. But I figured I'd say just to maybe for a few laughs, I saw that if they cut Russell Wilson next year, they're on the hook for $87 million more dollars. $87 million more dollars, and the next year I think they would lose money. I think the year after too. So they have no choice but to ride this thing out and hope they get the right head coach. And it's gonna have to be an offensive minded head coach, you'd think.
And I agree with you. I mean, you're going to have to find the right type of offensive coach that's going to mesh well with Russell Wilson. But one thing I do worry about is his regression. To me, it seems like Russell Wilson's going what Donovan McNabb went through when Philly let him go and he ended up going to Washington. So is there really any saving Russell Wilson?
I don't know, honest. I really don't know. And like it's hard. It's really hard to say because we know that Denver's coaching was a mess this year. We saw, it was especially on display. Whenever yesterday the players are fighting, even week 4 players are fighting, and Hackett couldn't have cared less. I remember the one time in Carolina, one of the linemen was yelling at Russ, and Hackett sitting right there just didn't even bother to turn around. That's how you know you have no control, no credibility whatsoever. And as far as whether or not Russell Wilson can, you know, find the form he once had, I really don't know because right now it really looks to me like he's lost pretty much all confidence in himself. I wouldn't say all, but I think we can safely say this is probably a low point in his confidence right now because you see him out on the field that he's missing open receivers, all the time. I definitely think that his interceptions in for example, the game against the Colts lost him that game, again, it just hasn't gone well for them at all. And I definitely think there's some things that are going to improve. For example, Denver this year had one of the worst offenses in the red zone. I think that's one of those things that's going to improve with coaching. But is it going to be enough? I don't know. I just don't know because you can just as easily say he's just washed right now. And especially now that since he's left Seattle, there's been stuff coming out that apparently he's just kind of a jerk. Apparent because we saw several weeks ago when Tyler Lockett from the Seahawks was interviewed, and then he said something like, "It's nice when," he said something like, "It's nice when one person doesn't care about who gets all the credit," which definitely seemed like a shot at Russell Wilson. And I heard something else, and I don't know if it's true at all, so do not quote me on this, but I also heard something this year that apparently every time that Russell Wilson would go into the field, he would say something like, "It's Russ time to fight," despite the fact that they have arguably the worst offense in the league. Like you just got to be more aware, how that will rub your teammates the wrong way. So maybe it'll take more soul searching on Russ's part. Maybe their coaching is that bad. Maybe he's just washed. But honestly, if you were to ask me, I think it's a little bit of everything here.
And I agree with that. I mean, you got to take a lot of things into consideration with Russell Wilson. I think he's basically shown he's a system quarterback, and let's give Pete Carroll's system credit because obviously it works.
Yes. And a lot of it, because I was one of those people last year who was like, fire Pete Carroll. I was wrong.
And I'll admit being wrong too. I mean, there were times I felt Pete Carroll needed to move on, but really it was just more along the lines. I just felt he was declining in his playmaking ability. But as it looks like, as the Broncos have showed us, that basically Russell Wilson might be a little more sus. And basically, when you get to the point where Patrick from SpongeBob roasts you on a Nickelodeon game of this, I don't know where you go from there.
It's all just bad for them. But again, the Broncos have no choice here but to find hopefully the right guy. Nathaniel Hackett wasn't it. And I'm honestly surprised he made it this long, because I don't think there was any game you could really point to this year and say he did well. And of course, I don't watch Broncos games that closely, but just looking at the Broncos were on a good few primetime games this year. Like we saw, and every time they were out there, they sucked.
And Ryan bringing up a great point. The Broncos being in a very terrible situation with no first-round draft pick and a regressed quarterback, so they do need to find a way to be a run team first and help Russ out. So,
which Javonte Williams is on IR with that AC on LCL. We don't know how he's going to come back from that, but he was doing pretty well. And the Broncos, I think, if you get him back healthy, which he's young, and you potentially get more around him, they could be a pretty good running team. I really think they could.
Shout out to Al Pearson in the chat for joining us. Good seeing you, Al. And finishing up with Nathaniel Hackett. So moving forward, he's more likely going to go back to being an offensive coordinator. Do what you're good at. And some coaches have to learn that the hard way. So what team do you think that would probably be the best fit for Hackett's skill set?
I hope not us. And honestly, I don't know how popular this is. I'm not really honestly sure just how great of a offensive coordinator that Nathaniel Hackett really is, because remember, he was fired from Jacksonville back in 2018, and when he was on the Packers, the Packers had a good offense, but then you have Aaron Rodgers, you have Devontae Adams, and Matt LaFleur, who already himself is an offensive head coach, so who knows really just how much of an impact Nathaniel Hackett had. I mean, I will say this right here, as a Titans fan, if we replace Downing with Nathaniel Hackett, I will not be happy.
But I will play devil's advocate and say, if you can take Blake Bortles and make him relevant, there might be something special about you.
Fair. I mean, Blake Bortles does really suck, but again, I mean, we at least know he shouldn't be a head coach again. He should not do that.
It's a hard lesson learned, but some coordinators just need to stay coordinators. Nathaniel Hackett, more than likely, will be a coordinator for the rest of his NFL career.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, of course, guys, it's Monday Night Football. We've got a great matchup tonight with the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. This one definitely could lock up playoff implications for the Chargers, and for the Colts, pick your poison.
They're already eliminated, right?
They're very much eliminated. So for the Colts, they're just playing to play.
Yep.
So realistically, Max, are the Chargers going to be a threat once they get in the playoffs?
I don't think so at all. And I think a lot of it, we know the talent they have, but they've had a lot of injuries this year. Is Joey Bosa back yet? I honestly don't know.
I don't know if he's playing or not. I think they're keeping that close to the chest. So,
but
we'll find out
the Chargers offensively, they've not been good. Brandon Staley has had a lot of very sus moments as head coach, and you just look at the teams that also in front of them. I don't think they're better than Kansas City at all. I don't think they're better than Cincinnati. I don't think they're better than Buffalo, and even the Titans, and the super injured Titans in the midst of a losing streak, went in and almost beat them. So no, honestly, I don't see the Chargers even sniffing a Super Bowl. And maybe I'll eat my words, but I just don't.
So we'll get our answers in the chat to let everybody know who they think is going to win this game. But Max, who do you like in this matchup tonight?
Probably the Chargers, because I think the Colts are even more of a mess. And Matt Ryan's not even playing at all. He's inactive. They're just going to go with Nick Foles, as you can see him in the on the background right there. But I think the Colts season is pretty much done at this point. No Jonathan Taylor. I honestly don't know how many other injuries they have, but the Colts season's done right now, and it's been done pretty much since it started, if we're being honest.
And I am not going to debate that as well. to me, I feel you just look at the work that the Chargers have done. Their defense is peaking at the right time. Justin Herbert continues to play good football. So I can't go against the Chargers, and I won't. I lock them up for this game, and with this win, we'll basically punch their ticket to the playoffs, meaning that they won't have anything less to worry about unless a few teams lose in front of them and change some dynamics for some other teams' playoff implications.
Yeah, I think, when you look at everything, because both teams not great coaching at all, and then Chargers are just way more talented, especially at the quarterback position. I can't see them losing. Although Ryan Harris's comment right there, this is kind of the game the Chargers lose based off history. Yeah, you can't argue that either.
That's true. The Chargers have dropped.
I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I just think the Chargers will ultimately win it.
And in fact, I remember very vividly a winless Cleveland Brown team beat the Chargers back in, I think, in 2016.
And I actually said at that time, looking at the Browns' schedules, like that might be the one game they could win. And sure enough, they did.
But Ryan's going to go safe with the Chargers. I don't blame you, man. That's risky. Even with the Colts being at home, I still like the Chargers on the road.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
And Fox, I mean, that's a good point too. I mean, history changes and everything. Lou Man definitely looks like he's going with the Colts. So Lou Man's going to take.
History changes all the time, but although the Chargers, blowing it in games like these has not changed. That has not changed, and even this year.
Just typical Charger fashion. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Exactly.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick 30-second break, and when we come back, we break out the evening debate. The Titans could potentially go 7-10. Max and I are going to come up with a way to potentially change some things this offseason. We put some work into it, so you won't be disappointed. Yep. I'm Michael Bishop with the Power. We'll be back in 30. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop. Thank you for joining us on this Monday evening. It's great having everybody in here. Of course, we're talking about the Tennessee Titans on a 5-game losing streak. And before we get to that, we're definitely going to have a discussion about what we think that's going to potentially happen going forward with the upcoming offseason and what we think we can do to improve it from our mindset. But, of course, I need to thank my guest, Max Greenberg of Titan Size, for joining us on the show tonight. Max does fantastic work with the site, and definitely got to ask, man, what do you got in the works right now that you can share with us?
For the offseason?
Off-season, during season, whatever you got planned.
As far as this season goes, I think we talked about a little bit at the beginning of the episode. This team's pretty much finished. Injuries, bad offensive coaching, no momentum right now. Going into this thing, I said, losing 5-0 like this is not going to happen under Mike Vrabel's watch because this team has that, like I said, that resilient swagger about them. Not this year, really at all. They're really bad against teams with a winning record. Haven't been able to climb their way out of this losing streak. I just think all the redeemable factors about this team over the past few years that stayed consistent have not really been. And I honestly do think that we're going to lose out. I think the Cowboys. Looking at this game, just the line of scrimmage there, Micah Parsons versus Dennis Daly, I think that wins them the game alone. I just hope I just hope no one gets out of that game injured. I just want, as long as you get out of that game healthy, that's the biggest thing for me. The Jaguars, I know historically we've beaten them up, but again, look at them right now, playing really great. Trevor Lawrence playing really well, and we're not at all. I don't see anything really for this team right now in terms of this current season. I think it's just about done.
So before we get any deeper with that, Max, of course, I've got to let you shout out to the fans and let them know where to find your great content at our great website.
Are you talking about Titan Size and stuff?
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm Michael and I. We obviously write for Titan Size. You can look at our profiles. If you search Max Greenberg Titan Size, you'll find mine, Michael too. And we obviously, if you don't want to read articles, especially I know for a fact I'm always posting stuff on Twitter. Takes all the time. My Twitter username Max Greenberg 176. You always want to find stuff. You can always look us up there. But yeah, I'm always posting takes out there.
Max is being modest. He puts out some really great takes. Make sure you check that out. Always putting out good work. One of our best contributors out there at Titan Sized. And of course, as always, guys, we're part of the Titan Upload Network. So make sure you follow me, especially on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at the Power 615. Always putting out that good content for you. And we definitely thank Max for joining us tonight. One of our favorite guys that we love having on the show. Always brings good insight, and make sure you check out his articles that he puts out. He always puts out good ones, never disappoints.
Yep.
All right, Max, let's go ahead and get your breath. Try and find a situation where we can make this work. So realistically, the track the Titans are on basically looks like that they could potentially finish the season out 7-10. The losing streak could potentially go to 7. So let's take that scenario and go with this. If that's what happens, realistically, the Titans are going to be bevied with a huge situation on their doorstep. You're looking at potential cuts, you're looking at potential firings, and basically in a situation where ownership is still pushing to finalize a new stadium, losing season ticket sales is definitely going to be a big, big financial problem for them.
Yeah. Yeah. This team has, a lot of decisions to make. I think next year, if Todd Downing is still calling plays next year, then there's gonna be a lot of trouble, because I don't see how anyone's gonna I don't see how anyone's gonna have faith in this team, this offense, especially because we've seen it all in the past few years. I think there's gonna be I'm pretty much where I'm at this year is save my true pitchforks for the offseason, because I think firing John Robinson has really showed that at least the team right now, ownership, the coaching staff doesn't have a lot of faith in this current group of players to get us over the top. But there's a lot of decisions to make this offseason, and I hate to say it, I'm scared, honestly, because again, you bring back Todd Downing, I think that's pretty much an automatic out on our Super Bowl aspirations for next year, if you can even say that. But and you're gonna have to make a lot of cuts for players too, because there's several players, at least 4 of them, I would think, who should come off the books.
So realistically, if this scenario happens, this would basically be the first time where 3 teams now would own a situation where they would start from either 6-2 or 7-1 or 7-2 and basically finish losing out the rest of their games. The last 2 teams that did that were the 2018 Panthers and the 2007 Lions. And that's a very telling tale, especially knowing the fact that the years ahead were not good to these teams.
Right. Yeah, and maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, and this is, again, a lot of this, what I'm about to say right here, so probably not going to sit well with a lot of Titans fans, and maybe even people who kind of do the same work that Michael and I have. But right now, even honestly, if we win a playoff game, I think this team, at least the offense, has to go through just about a full rebuild at this point. Because say next year that you have Tannehill and Henry, you're riding with pretty much the same group. I don't, even through the roster cuts, I don't see how you're going to adequately replace the offensive line. You got to get receivers too, and this team just has so many deficiencies right now. And I just think that I just think that right now you got to really think toward the future with this team right now, because I just don't think I don't think there's an easy, realistic path to salvage this current core of players in their Super Bowl window.
And Vance Smith bringing up the point to keep the defense intact as best as you can.
Yes.
Resign Jeffrey Simmons, of course.
Yes.
Get the O-line shored up. You're going to need Ben Jones to return and try to keep Taylor Lewan on an affordable contract. So, Max, your thoughts on that?
Well, the defense, I definitely think the defense mostly as possible. I think the two players that we need to definitely cut from the defense. I think you got to cut Zach Cunningham. I also think you got to cut Bud Dupree because I think you're seeing in these past few weeks, without Danico Watry, how ineffective he's been. And he's making 17 million a year, especially next year. You got Harold Lynch coming back. You just don't need all that money tied up into Bud Dupree. And those are the two cuts I would make for sure. I definitely want to keep Kevin Byard. He's definitely one I do want to keep because I think a guy like him under contract for so many more years. He too has never missed a game in his career, and a guy like that as a safety who's plays a position that's not really going to age that poorly. He should still have several few years ahead of him that are going to be effective. I think keep him. Danico Watry, I'm sort of on the fence on because just based on what he's done, we've seen how much better he really makes everyone around him. But he also is 32, so like you got to think there. That's one I honestly don't have a definite answer for yet. I think I'm gonna have to think that through. About Ben Jones, Ben Jones is one of those I would love to keep, and if he's going to go there and be healthy, I think you keep him. But I think we're seeing this year he's been banged up a lot, and he's had multiple concussions. He may even decide to hang it up. Taylor Lewan, if you can get him on an affordable contract, I say yeah. But like even for Taylor Lewan, I honestly think he might just retire anyway because you look at him, what he's doing now. He's pretty much all about busting with the boys right now. He's been ever since his injury, he's gotten back into that and everything. And I don't know if you saw anyone else watching this scene, but several weeks ago he was asked about his future on the Tennessee Titans, whether or not he thinks he'll be on the team, and he pretty much said, "Well, if you look at the situation and you ask the question, will Taylor Lewan be on the Titans next year?" He said that he thinks that he'll be released because it makes sense too, because he's not worth the current contract right now that he's on. If you can do a significant restructure, then do that. But I don't know. But like, I just think he'll retire because especially hearing those words. And let me tell you right now, I'm all for people being realistic, seeing things as they are, because I definitely don't think Taylor Lewan's wrong at all. But I think that if you have any thought of coming back and playing, you're going to be talking about what you can do to help the team versus, oh, they're going to release me. And one way or another, Lewan cannot go into next season as the primary option at he cannot go into next season as the primary option at left tackle. He just can't.
I agree. I mean, it's a situation Tennessee's definitely going to have to make going forward, with the free agent market definitely being very thin and potentially making some tough decisions on draft day once they get everything finalized. So, Max, to get to our point, and of course the main point of this whole segment, I'm basically letting you make some tough decisions here, but it's going to be a very big decision. What needs to happen this offseason for the Tennessee Titans to build something successful?
Like with the current core, or just like moving forward in general?
With whatever I'm giving you free range, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
You can trade, you can do whatever you wish.
All right. This is really where the hard stuff's going to come in. So, but I'm going to say it. You cut or trade Tannehill, and you may not be able to get a lot for him, but do that. And if you can get value, trade Henry, because you look at him right now. He's coming up on 30. He's coming up on the last year of his contract. Likely the value that he has right now on the market as potentially a trade piece is never going to be higher than it is now. And there are teams like, for example, Miami and Buffalo that could see themselves as, especially offensively, as one running back away, and to really having a complete offense. And again, I guess this team could potentially go in next year and compete for a Super Bowl, but like there's just a lot of questions because you got, again, a running back who this team's been built around, who he's gonna get worse before he gets better, I think. And of course, it's Henry. Derrick Henry is not gonna be a bad running back at all. He's still gonna be effective, and I still think he's gonna be around the 1,300 to 1,500 range for the next few years. But again, you don't know how he's probably only gonna decline steadily. You got Tannehill, who's been pretty comfortably around the middle pack of the quarterbacks. He has a good player, but not necessarily a game changer. Again, I just think that if you're going in with this current core, you got more questions than answers. And I just think, especially what it says on the screen, the 2018 Panthers, the 29 and 2707 Lions, who only saw bad in front of them with after those losing streaks. And I just think for the Titans, you basically got to start over, start fresh. I just think right now the current group of players, especially on offense, it's just about done. Go on free agency, to use the money in free agency to invest in an offensive line. We cannot go into next year, no matter if we're rebuilding or competing, we cannot go into next year without a good offensive line. That has to be taken care of. Go out and sign a left tackle, go get a left guard, maybe a center if Ben Jones is not coming back. And I know it's easier said than done, but if you're the Titans front office, you got to be aggressive. Be first to do what it takes to get an offensive line in there, because everything starts from there. And if you don't have an offensive line, you're not going to compete at all. So do that, start from there, and go into next season. And this is where it may even be the most unpopular thing. Start Malik Willis with the expectation that he has to get better as the season goes on. And if you discover that he's not the answer, fine. Then you can make a play for Drake May or Caleb Williams in the next draft, knowing that could be your franchise QB and Malik's on it. But if Malik continues to improve and show that he could be that guy, then continue to roll with him, because I pretty much look at next year as a reset year and see what we have for the future.
And bringing up a lot of great points right there. Definitely rattling some cages too. Titan Fox was not happy about your Henry take, but it's those kind of takes that are really going to change the face of the franchise, probably for the better. Especially if you have a guy.
Let me say another thing. If you bring Tannehill and Henry back next year, that does not mean to me the offseason's a failure. I don't think that by any means, but you really got to consider it, because are you really? And the one thing I will say is, I don't want Henry walking out of the building for nothing. If we lose Derrick Henry just straight up, and especially for a team that already had a lot of questions about getting over the top of their current core, and then I don't know.
And it's decisions like that draw the narrative where the Titans are going to have to be aggressive.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, you go with the players, but I'm going to go a completely different direction. I've watched Mike Vrabel very closely the last few weeks, and especially today in his press conference. And from what I've seen, you just see a coach that is absolutely burned out.
Yes.
You see somebody that just looks like that there is no light at the end of the tunnel, that this has just been a grind. The man even looks like he's put on a few pounds just from stress eating. And I'm just calling what I see.
Yeah.
And in a situation right now where the Titans are trying to find answers, where they're sliding further and further each week, where it seems like it's always the players' fault. It's the coaches that just seem to not have anything to do with the current situation, where Vrabel continues to act like that there's no wrong that Todd Downing can do, but in another sly way continues to put everyone on the same level, but more or less. I'm going to say this, and I know this is going to piss off a lot of people, but I'm going to say it because it needs to be said, and it's the truth. Mike Vrabel will not win a Super Bowl with the Tennessee Titans. And that's just a cold, hard fact. I don't believe it. I don't believe in his system anymore. I don't think a lot of the players do. And when you lose some of the locker room, you don't get that back. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I just think he's made bad decisions. And I think, unfortunately, where this slide continues to go forward, it's going to make things even worse going forward. Now, I'm not going to fire him because Mike Vrabel has something that a lot of head coaches in his position don't have. They have value. Mike Vrabel right now has value to somebody. But, of course, you're asking the million-dollar question, to whom? Well, I'm going to kindly remind you all that as of right now, there's a certain team out there that owns the certain rights to a certain coach that is looking to get themselves back into coaching. And the realistic standpoint is you look at a lot of the teams that this coach is looking at. And I'm going to tell you right now, if they're in the NFC, you can just forget about it because they're not going to trade him to an in-conference rival. Mike Vrabel, however, has won Coach of the Year. He's went to the playoffs just about every year that he's been with the Tennessee Titans. And he's very capable of changing the dynamic in any locker room. So, as Ryan Harris said earlier, which because I guess he's reading my notes, I'm going in on Sean Payton. I need somebody that understands in an offensive-driven league that will make this offense go. Because right now the Titans have something that a lot of these other teams have. As I said, forget about the NFC teams. The Saints aren't going to trade him to an NFC rival, or anybody in the NFC for that matter. But of course you say, well, Mike, what about the Colts? The Colts aren't going to give away a high draft pick in order to get Sean Payton. They have enough problems as it is. They're in very good position to get a quarterback. They can't miss on another quarterback by signing a free agent. The Chargers' job's not going to happen because it looks like Brandon Staley is more than likely going to basically walk into the playoffs, so that kind of saves his job this year. And Denver, that's laughable. Denver has no draft commodity. They have no players that they want to bring in from Denver because at this point, that's just more contracts the Saints are going to have to take after. They want picks or they want something of greater value. And I'm offering to the Saints something of greater value. A head coach that has been in the league, that has been successful, has gotten to the playoffs, and basically needs a fresh start. It's basically a swap. And if a pick comes into play with it, I'm more than gladly to negotiate it. But realistically, the Titans have got to stop living in the past. They're running an offense that's built like a Trans Am, and every other offense in the league is a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a Bugatti.
I mean, here's the thing I'll say about Mike Vrabel, especially you look at the past few weeks, with him going to these press conferences and looking, down on himself and all this. I'll just say, he, like the rest of us, is human, and he's going to, and coaching especially is an experience where you're going to learn certain things work and certain things don't. And he's probably going through what a lot of us go through, and he's going to have to, make some tough decisions as a job that all of us do, not just at our job, but in our life. So I with the way Mike Vrabel has, fared during his years with the Titans, he's gotten several of the players, like throughout his, if you take out these past few weeks, he's a coach that pretty much has had all the players on board with them. You look at even a guy like AJ Brown, who is on the Eagles now, and he went and said, "Oh, Mike Vrabel's no fun." But even when he was on the Titans, he went and credited Mike Vrabel for, partially saving his life when he was going through a mental health crisis when he was on the Titans. You just can't ignore that stuff to me. And Mike Vrabel, throughout his time with the Titans, has built a great culture with the team, and that matters. That being said, what he showed us in the past few weeks has left a lot of doubt in the minds of our fans. Especially with Todd Downing, you just can't justify Todd Downing being on this team next year. And if Mike is unwilling to get rid of them, that is, at the very least, is enough for me to put him on the hot seat. And again, he's just going to have to make a lot of the tough decisions that he may not want to make. For example, prioritizing people that he himself has relationships with is not, unless you have the right guy. For example, Arthur Smith, when he was on the Titans, it's not going to win you championships in the NFL. It may get you a good few playoff berths. And, for a guy like Vrabel, whenever we talk about him, being hard on the players, and there's good and bad that comes with that. For example, the good obviously is because Mike Vrabel is not the kind of coach who's going to demand more than what he puts in. He's going to do what he can to coach these players the right way, and he's going to and he's going to get the absolute best out of these players that he can. But again, at some point, it's going to have to be on the coach. It's going to have to be on the system to evolve to know what it takes to win the NFL nowadays versus back in like the 80s and 90s where it was all about physicality in the run game. So from what Mike Vrabel has shown, I think he's gotten the benefit. He's gotten the benefit of the doubt, at least as far as we can hope that he's can do some serious soul searching and make these changes to save his job, and more importantly, to save to save himself and keep going with the current group of players, because we know how much he loves the players. The players talk about, and other players in the league, for example, I overheard last year at the Pro Bowl, Patrick Mahomes was talking about how he'd love to play for Mike Vrabel. But again, that stuff matters. But at the same time, he's gonna have to make a lot of tough decisions to do what he can to actually get this team over the top to win a Super Bowl. And I'm gonna give him credit, and I'm gonna give him hope that he can make those changes. But if he's unwilling to make those changes, then he might have to go.
And that's just my problem, Max. I mean, the thing I just feel at this point in a league where you're now in a conference with Patrick Mahomes, with Justin Herbert, with Trevor Lawrence coming up, with Deshaun Watson whenever he gets back to his self, which, I mean, that's another debate at another time.
Yeah.
Realistically, in an offensive-driven league, Mike Vrabel's running a system that worked in the 1980s.
Yes.
And it's evolve or die. And at this point, we have seen the Titans' flaws. And I can't overlook that anymore. And in a span where Amy Adams Strunk cannot afford to lose season ticket holders, she has got to make a move that is going to be aggressive and get the fans' attention. The Tennessee Titans don't get any media coverage because they're not interesting. Let's just call it what it is.
Right.
They're not interesting. I get Sean Payton on this team, you're suddenly interesting. You suddenly have a coach that found Tony Romo as an undrafted player. Let him work with Ryan Tannehill. Let him get his hands on Malik Willis. I'm a lot more comfortable with him working with those quarterbacks than anybody else that the Titans have had in maybe the last 7 years. So Amy has got to be aggressive here
and
start looking outside the box.
About the Titans, especially this year with the offensive coaching staff, is, you look at them, they brought in Tim Kelly as a passing game coordinator, and he was successful with I wouldn't say successful, but he did. I think he got every ounce of what he could out of the Texans offense and more. For example, when he was working with Davis Mills, he looked pretty decent. Now they don't believe him at all. But why not give him a shot to call some plays or even call some games?
And I agree with you on that part. I mean, we've definitely, especially on the Titans website, been screaming that for most of the year because we felt that Tim Kelly was very viable in stepping in and handling that position. But Mike Vrabel's not budged.
And what's crazy is I wrote an article a few weeks ago at the John Robinson firing, and I pretty much said that if you had to choose between Vrabel and Robinson, I think Vrabel is the right choice because he's for most of the time he's gotten the most out of the talent that he's had. He's built great relationships with the players. He's built a great culture in the locker room. He's done all this great stuff, but again, if he's not willing to evolve, and you're giving him full power of this organization, it's not going to happen.
And honestly, I think we might be beyond that. I think Mike Vrabel's stubbornness has basically just pushed him to the edge, and a lot of tough decisions are going to be made once this offseason rolls around. We're very much potentially going to be looking at another Mike Mularkey situation because somebody just doesn't want to admit defeat.
Right. And
if that's the case,
Vrabel can do it.
Cash your chips out.
Yeah.
The Saints are very well looking for something in value between a pick or potentially somebody on the level of Sean Payton. And while Mike Vrabel's not exactly neck and neck, that's still a better option than Dennis Allen.
Yeah, and again, I'm with you. I wouldn't say I think, and I just think firing Vrabel, just straight up firing it would not be a good move, especially with. I think it sent a pretty bad message to the organization. But at some point, you got to be proactive and not reactive. So there's a lot of tough decisions to be made this offseason, but I think right now, I just think we truly have to wait till the offseason to see how these things play out.
And I mean, whether it be players, whether it be staff, major changes have to be made.
Yep.
But the biggest thing going forward is
Titans fan right now, and
it is, and that's the thing. It's, are we just going to let everybody just move past us, or are we going to evolve with the times and try and find a way to be better? I've basically presented a way to make us better, to make us relevant.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I feel confident enough Sean Payton could have a career resurgence like Andy Reid did with the Chiefs. Sometimes guys get burned out and they need a change of scenery.
Yeah. And I very much think that when Sean Payton retired last year, it was very much one of those things where it's like, yeah, he retired, but like he's probably not done with coaching.
It was just it was basically a step away situation.
Yeah. Kind of take a year off, kind of reevaluate, and then go back into coaching. I certainly wouldn't complain with Sean Payton on the Titans at all. Not one bit.
I wouldn't either.
And that's another reason why I say you got to rebuild, because even next year, if you're going to put a new system in place and you got these players in this core that has questions about getting over the top, everything just seems like, again, you got more questions than answers, and installing a new system is going to take time. You got to play a few games. You got to see how everything plays out. So that's just why I say, preferably you rebuild, and hopefully Mike Vrabel does evolve with the times, but he may not. That just may not happen.
A lot of defensive coaches don't. I mean, Bill Belichick thought his system was flawless, and look where he is now.
All the difference is he has a Super Bowl to go along with it. Mike Vrabel does not.
And Tom Brady.
Yeah, well, that's true, but that's a whole nother topic of discussion.
Agreed. But realistically, the Tennessee Titans are at the crossroads are bigger than we have led them on to believe. I mean, at this point, they're highway size.
Yeah.
And Tennessee's either going to get crushed with everybody coming up and getting better. The Jaguars are getting better.
Yeah.
The Browns will eventually get better. The Chargers are really good at some point. The road for the Super Bowl will potentially go through the Chiefs most years as long as Patrick Mahomes stays their quarterback. Tennessee has to evolve. And I mean, if you're going to stick with Malik Willis,
Houston gets better too, because they're going to get Bryce Young. They're going to get a bunch of studs in the draft. It very much seems like it's a season for the Titans to evolve or become like a clown franchise.
Exactly. So my whole point, Sean Payton's out there. I think a trade's doable. Tennessee doesn't have to necessarily fully rebuild, but a restructure, I think, is the best way to go forward, because I think Payton, especially with Tannehill or with Malik Willis, whoever he feels is the better viable option there, he'll get the best out of him.
Yeah.
Let's remember Drew Brees was at the end of his career before he basically resurrected it in New Orleans.
Yeah. Yep. And when I say rebuild this team, a lot of people will hear rebuild and say, I mean, you want everybody gone. I don't want everybody gone. For example, I want to keep Kevin Byard. I want us to re-sign David Long. That's one guy I really want to bring back. And if I were to say on Danico Autry right now, I'd probably say give him about a 2-year extension, because I do believe with the right moves, this team in the 2 years could be pretty decent, if not a contender again. But again, it's all about, are those right moves going to be made? Unfortunately, right now there's a lot more questions than answers.
And that's the truth.
Yep.
And I mean, Fox, the biggest thing is change is uncomfortable, but it's coming.
Yeah.
And it's going to go one or two ways. They're going to regress or they're going to progress.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's a situation where this team is basically looking at a lot of other teams getting better and their window shrunk.
It's very much a situation where it seems like the game is passing them by.
And I think that's just one thing we took for granted. I think we took for granted the fact that we didn't have to add a lot of pieces when actual fact, we really needed to revamp a lot of things going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's a lot of the reason why John Robinson ended up getting the boot, because a lot of his gambles, for example, trading A.J. Brown, doing nothing to replace Taylor Lewan, all came back to bite him in the butt.
But regardless of the situation that we're in, whether we go with a full revamp of players or a revamp of the staff, something needs to happen.
Yeah.
The world's moved by and Tennessee watched it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of tough decisions one way or another, man. I don't know. We're just going to have to see how this thing plays out. A very, very critical offseason coming for the Tennessee Titans, probably more so than I've been a fan of this team for so long, but there's only been like the past 5 or so years where I've been really really invested as much as I am now. This is probably the most critical offseason I think that the Titans are going to have this year. I think it's been more critical than the one last year and the ones before that.
Realistically, you better buckle up, kids, because it's going to get rough this year.
Yeah. Things I think are going to get worse before they get better.
And it's usually how change goes.
Yep.
But let's take a quick breath, and we'll be back in 30 seconds. And when we come back, we'll break down last week's game for a little bit and get into Titans, Cowboys, what it means, what they've got to do to potentially get a win, or doesn't matter. Hey, that's why we're here to discuss this.
Yep.
I'm Michael Bishop of the Power Hour. We'll be back in 30. Power Hours on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and as always, Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining us on this Monday evening. Guys, you're fantastic. You've been putting on a lot of comments. Love the output that you're putting. You're what make this show successful. Give yourselves a round of applause. Without you, we wouldn't be doing the show. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And, of course, joining us from Titans Eyes, our good friend Max Greenberg, giving a lot of great takes tonight. Max, I want to thank you once again for taking the time for joining us on the show. And we've definitely had a lot of great comments. Shout out to Ian. Ian is in on the show, so good seeing Ian.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ian puts out a lot of great pieces for Titan Size, too. Don't forget about him.
Definitely make sure you check him out as well if you're on the Titan Side website. Once again, one of our other great contributors who puts out the work. Titan Fox, thanks, buddy. I appreciate you a lot. Shout out to Titans Time Podcast. Does a really good show as well. We've had him on multiple shows. Very popular on TikTok, too. So he gave his 2 cents on the game. So the man was not happy, and we'll just leave it at that. But once again, everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And before we get out of here, we've got one more segment. We'll catch our breath, and let's just plow through this because I know we don't want to relive the past, but it's like ripping off a Band-Aid. We'll get through it, I promise.
Yep.
So Max says it happened. Of course, the Tennessee Titans dropped their 5th game in a row against the just god almighty awful Houston Texans. But I will give props where props are deserved. The Texans played a 2-quarterback system, which seemed to work out very well for them. And they just made enough plays. So from the game standpoint, what do you think worked for the Titans and what they need to do better going forward to this Thursday night matchup?
I mean, I say the one thing that I thought kind of did get better was the pass rush. I know we only got 1 sack, but maybe it has to do more with the Texans. But I thought, we were getting more pressure on the opposing quarterback, and I thought Autry's return had an impact too. Quite honestly, I know Henry ran over the Texans like he usually does, but again, I feel like we know that's going to happen, and even we've seen this offense. Even when Derrick Henry runs the football well, he is still not enough. And that comment, Henry continues to fumble the football. You can't blame anyone but him for that, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I hate to say it, but it's almost like we're at the point in the regular season where it's just like, how much can we really evaluate what's going on? Because we've had so many injuries, so many, Todd Downing, of course, and again, Malik Willis goes out there. I think he's doing about what he can. Again, it's only his 3rd game of his career in the regular season. We know he's a long-term project, and you put him out there in a horrible situation. I mean, I don't know really what more we expected out of him. And it's something I've been on Twitter about, and I'm actually going to write about on Titan Size too. It's like, for those of you who watch this game and will now say Malik is not the answer, you watch his previous 3 games. It's like, can you blame the guy? Like, are we giving him a chance to succeed at all with this team? Because if we're just dumping a guy 3 games into his career, he's got so much athleticism, so much, he's got all this upside, and you're gonna go out and punish him for playing terrible in a horrible offense. It's like, if you're gonna blame him for this, then if we're gonna go out there and blame him for this loss, then there's a lot wrong with this franchise for sure.
Agreed. I mean, Malik made his fair share of mistakes, but he was already miles ahead of where he was when he started the first Texans game, and even when he started against the Chiefs. So you can't put a kid against a team that's basically protecting him with a patchwork offensive line, 1 good receiver that hadn't been able to stay healthy, a team that's using a 4 receiver as a 1, and basically just loading Derrick Henry down to the point where it just seems like mentally the season's starting to take a toll on him. I can't expect Malik Willis to do everything, but I've always felt it's important and imperative to a rookie quarterback that they're placed with a solid offensive coordinator and an even more solid offensive game plan.
Yeah, I mean, Malik is just he's in no position to succeed with the current state of affairs, especially with the offensive line. With the offensive line, it's already a bad offensive line to begin with, and then you take out Ben Jones and Nate Davis. It's just, there's something you can do, and I know people are going to say he can't throw a football more than 25 yards, but go out there and have Dennis Daly block for you, and you're not going to be able to do much of anything at all. Like, I literally saw a play on Saturday where Malik gets the ball in the pocket, Dennis Daly completely whiffs on the block as per usual, and Malik is just hit right then and there, and he can't escape it. It's like, I don't know. It's like, and let me tell you let me just say this right now. If people have doubt about Malik Willis, that is completely understandable. That is completely understandable to have doubt about him. Because if you go out there and you see a quarterback who can't throw a football, of course you're going to be a little skeptical. And I'm not going to go out and say that I am sold on Malik as being this franchise quarterback. I think he could be that. But for the people who are out there saying, let's just go out there and we're already out on Malik Willis, it's just not fair at all.
And I agree. I mean, the realistic expectations I had of Malik Willis was to get him to learn the basic principles of quarterbacking in the NFL. Unfortunately, he's been thrown into the fire. It's his baptism by fire. And for the most part, he showed exactly what we felt that he was going to put out. He's still learning. And in an offensive system,
even if he's starting.
And in an offensive system that's just completely inept to his talent and his skill set, I don't know what more he could do. Sometimes it just looks like he's completely handcuffed.
And like, I also want to bring. I can't really talk about Malik Willis without talking about the comments that kind of ruffled some feathers the other day after the game, where he pretty much said, I'm as happy as I would have been if I would have won." And I know a lot of quotes be taken out of context, and I understand how people can look at it and be like, "Oh, this is a guy that doesn't care." But like, every situation's different, and you look at a guy like that, and Malik's had a great attitude the whole time he's been in the NFL. He goes out every day. You'll see him post on his Instagram, since Twitter. He's like, "I'm thankful to go out there, glorify God's name, all this, and that." And even in the games that he's played, like, for example, against the Chiefs, where they asked him about the lack of receiving threats, and he pretty much said, "Why would I go blame the receivers when I have to focus on what I have to do better myself?" He pretty much said, "I'm not going to do that because that'd just be really arrogant on my part." That's the stuff you wanna see from a quarterback. Like, you wanna see coachability, you wanna see that he's willing to learn, you wanna see that he's clearly putting in the work, that what it takes to be a great quarterback. And of course, get when you make comments like that, I can see why people would be a little upset, and I'll agree that it's not the greatest look, but, like, I mean, give the guy some credit for, staying positive throughout all of this. And it's great. And more so than I'd say, guys like Byard and Henry, it makes more sense for a guy to be still have an attitude like that, because he's still learning and he knows that the pressure really isn't on him as far as going out there and being a stud this year, because everyone knew that he shouldn't be playing this year. And I'll ask this question: would you rather see a guy like Malik saying, "I'm just happy that I would have won," or would you rather see a guy like Zach Wilson who just says, "Oh no, not my problem, no, whatsoever"?
I just want a quarterback that's going to go out there and give the team the best ability to win. And I mean,
Right?
right
There's
now,
no one can argue that.
Malik Willis is just the guy that has to step up and handle that responsibility. I wish he was in a better place where he could have a better offensive line around him and better skill set players, because all those things matter, especially in just the proper growth and development of a quarterback that hasn't had a lot of training on the basic stuff. Throughout most of his college career, was basically just told to just, make it up on the fly.
Right? Yeah, it's just, and then you put him in the NFL right now again. What rookie quarterback like that's going to succeed with Todd Downing as your offensive coordinator? It's not going to happen. It's not.
No, no, he basically
And let me
almost
ask this
ruined
question
Derek
too:
Carr.
like, people, yeah, I mean, people who have seen the Titans offense, with Tannehill, who's a better quarterback right now, and that offense is easy to figure out, with even with Henry doing well. Well, how could you imagine a guy like Malik who's super raw? How easy do you think that's going to be able to figure out? Going to be pretty easy. Maybe that's not the best analogy, but you see what I'm saying. It's like, of course, the Titans are not in any position to succeed with the way things are right now. Just not.
No, and I mean, what's even more frustrating is the fact that the defense continues to give the offensive endless chances in these games, and the offense doesn't capitalize. It's just
And
such a
like I said,
waste.
they're getting tired. You're seeing in real time that they literally can't. It doesn't matter how good your defense is if they're on the field all the time. And with the injuries, we talk about strength conditioning, bad luck, this and that. How much of it is due to the defense just getting tired? Because the defense, I mean, I don't necessarily the numbers to back it up, but it seems like ever since the Kansas City game, where they played so many snaps, that they're dropping way more easily now. Every play that you go out there is a greater risk for injury.
Agreed. And I mean, let's just point out the other biggest flaw on this team. It's the strength and conditioning team. For the last 3 to 4 years, the decline has just been ungodly. I've
Yeah,
never seen an NFL team just lose an abundantly heavy number of players
right.
within just that time frame. It's you blink and the IR basically goes from being from 4 players to 7 to 9 to 13.
And it's just like, again, injuries are going to happen in football. Everyone knows that. And if we could have done something about it, it would have been figured out long ago. That being said, when you look at the Titans, especially in these last 2 years, like, everyone drops like flies. It's just like, do we really think it's bad luck anymore? And I myself, I've tried to give the benefit of the doubt. I've gone out because especially this year, you're looking, and a lot of teams are super injured, but not every team is super injured every year.
But you look at the teams that are going to the playoffs and, going to the conference championships and then the Super Bowl. Those are the teams with the less injuries. They figured
Right.
it out.
Yeah.
Mike Vrabel wants to play a physical style of football, but damn it, you need to have a strength and conditioning team that can match that output. And this one
And
clearly
and that
cannot.
and that's another thing I was going to talk about. It's like you look at the Titans style of play where it's physical, it's bruising, especially, it's a kind of system where players going to get rolled up on each other all the time. It's just like how much of it's due to the style of play? I mean, maybe, is it? I think it's a little of everything, but how much more of it has to do with the system they're playing and not having, like you said, not having the strength and conditioning to overcome it. It's just a mess. It's again, it's one of those things where it's got to just be a little bit of everything here. I mean, but I will say that I think just the defense getting tired has to be a huge thing to do with it too, because they can only do so much for 2 straight years of having to bail out this pathetic offense. Ugh,
Agreed. And it seems like
so
years ago we were talking the complete opposite. It was the offense that was making the plays and the defense that was the problem.
no, not anymore.
We've gone a full 360.
Yeah. And the only difference, unlike last year, is now you're seeing what's happening to the defense, that the effects of going out there, pretty much having to bail them out every snap.
And that's just the hardest part going forward because, once again, that just makes these decisions even more difficult for where they're going to have to start making cuts on some guys. They're going to have to start finding more depth elsewhere, especially where right now they're thin at a lot of positions and there's just nowhere to find quality depth right now. They're just scraping the bottom of the barrel. And going into the Cowboys game, I mean, understandably, the biggest talking point is should they rest guys? Should that be the point where the Titans just need to just scrap this game and just look forward to Week 18?
Yeah, yeah. It just, I mean, the Dallas game. I mean, we'd love to win. Again, no matter what, for me, it's like even if we do make the playoffs, I'm not truly all about it. Because like even Kevin Byard said in his interview a few weeks ago, like we don't just want to. He's like I'm done just making the playoffs. I'm done just going there to see us get killed in the first round. It's like no, we want to do something more than that. And for me, even if we do win these last 2 games, I don't think we're going to. I think we're going to lose them both. But even if we do, and just to get destroyed in the wild card round, I don't know. I'm just yeah. I'm just over it.
I agree. I'm tired of showing up to the party and then leaving early. The whole 2019 run just basically wet the beaks of everybody. And potentially we got our hopes up thinking that this could be something that could be just nonstop. And that wasn't the
And the
case.
beginning of the 2020 season, I think, reaffirmed those hopes too, because we were 5-0 and things were going well, but it just hasn't really been that way since.
So to finish it out, especially talking about next week's game, I mean, realistically, what are the Titans going to have to try and prove here at this point? Is it the fact that they have to try and get a win, or is it just to get through this thing without getting any more guys just hammered and beat up?
I mean, I definitely, like I said earlier, the main thing is you just got to get out of this game healthy. Because again, Micah Parsons going up against Dennis Daly is about the nightmarest of the nightmare mismatches there is. Get people out healthy, and quite honestly, I mean, and let me tell you right now, when I'm thinking about today, I don't doubt this at all. From especially from the guys like Byard, Big Jeff, Henry, and well, Tannehill's not playing. I don't doubt like the drive from those guys. I just want to see some pride at this point. I want to see go out and put up a fight and show that. and whether or not we believe it. Show that this team is still intact. Show that this locker room is still intact. Go out and show that like they still want to play for something. Because right now, I mean, I look at a team that's just dead, and the way you, even if you don't win the game, the way you can show us that there's still some fight is if you go out in Dallas and put up and keep it close. But I don't expect that to happen. I still expect a blowout. And I don't know how you really, it's tough to evaluate anything right now, especially with the injuries we have and stuff. But like, I just want to I just want to see us go out and just play and do, and just put up a fight and show that it matters.
And that's all we can hope for at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
realistically, Tennessee's about as battered as a team could come into a game at this point. What's the more important probability here? Is it trying to get to Week 18 with this matchup with Jacksonville? Is it trying to play for pride? I mean, it's all going to come down to what the players feel is best and what they do out there. I mean, if they want to go out there and try and play for the win, I mean, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of us feel different. I know there's a lot of different opinions about it. Ian brings up a great point here. He doesn't want to see any starters except from Lake and Dennis Daly. And honestly, at this point, I'd settle for a brick wall with a jersey taped on it other than Dennis Daly.
Oh, yeah. Put you and me out there, and I think us as a collective effort could do about as well as Dennis Daly could at this point.
Well, I used to play offensive line, so my foot works better.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, I just think there's another thing with this coaching staff that's kind of made me question. It's like, even though he went out there and he tore his ACL, how was Dylan Radin just not given a chance at all throughout this year? And there was one guy I was talking to who normally sits next to me for these games, and he was talking about how, of course, that Dylan Radin's play out guard, he was actually a pretty bad run blocker, but like, you think about him run blocking in college, he was going up against college level outside linebackers, and then you put him up against defensive tackles at the NFL level. Of course, it's not going to go well. And they've been just messing with him this whole time, going from position to position to position, instead of just pigeonholing him to left tackle, which he's been on record saying many times that's his position and that's what he's best at. And then, but you have Dennis Daly out there, and you don't even give Radins a shot.
And finally getting his shot, unfortunately, it was a situation he goes down with an injury. And once again, major shout out to the strength and conditioning coach. I mean, at some point, it's just, if you don't laugh, you'll cry about it. And I think that's where some Titans fans are at this point anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be out at the game Thursday, but my expectations are just about as low as you can expect.
I'm just hoping we can get through and be competitive.
Yeah.
Whatever happens is going to happen. But yes, especially healthy.
I think this could get very ugly.
And I mean, as you said, the Cowboys are pretty sound on the offense and defensive side of the ball. So if they decide to rest their guys too, I mean, realistically, the Cowboys are already in the playoffs. I don't think there's much more they could play for other than maybe a higher spot, if that's possible. But I don't know.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, this could be one of those trap games, but
that'd be nice.
I just don't know. Again, like I've said many times, I just don't see what you can really take. It's so hard to evaluate this team right now, and I just think we just got to get to the season, get to the off season, because off season is really where we're going to really evaluate everything, in my opinion.
And for a lot of us, the off season can't get here soon enough. So
yeah, I'm like that too.
If the Tennessee Titans do end up getting to the playoffs by some crazy miracle, we'll just see what happens. I mean, they do or they don't at this point. I'm pretty sure everybody's lukewarm to the idea at this point and just trying to get to next season.
Hey, it was gonna take some major miracle for us to not make the playoffs, and here we are. So who knows? It could take a major miracle and us make it. But again, like I said, what does it matter?
It's funny. I mean, especially with the tweet up right here, at 7-3, they basically had a cakewalk to just try and finish. And now we're potentially looking at 7-10. So Thursday night football is going to be a telling tale. It's going to be a game where we're really going to figure out if Tennessee's going to just try and phone it in or actually go out and play. At this point right now, expectations are mid.
At best. At best. at very best.
Well, I'll give the optimistic point of there. So about mid-level is about where I'm going to just leave it there.
Hey, I'll take optimism at this point because, again, we're not the ones going out there making decisions. We just can talk about them here and watch the games.
And Lord knows we've talked about the negative aspect of it for way too long. So hopefully by next week, maybe we've got something good coming out of it.
Yep. Yeah, you never know.
But everybody, thank you for joining us on the Power Hour tonight. You have been fantastic with your comments and all your input tonight. So, guys, because of you, that's why this show's successful and, of course, why we keep doing this. So please, of course, give yourselves a round of applause. You're the stars of the show. You make this possible. We keep putting out these great shows and content for you. So that's why we do it. We love doing what we do. And that's why Max and I are a part of Fanside Network at Titans Sized. So make sure you check us both out and all our great articles. Max doing fantastic work. Ian Schiller also one of our great contributors out there. So make sure you check us out and the great content we put out. Max, definitely got to give you another shout out. Thank you for joining us on the show tonight. Really, you brought the heat tonight, man. So,
oh yeah,
in a week where we definitely had not a lot of good things to talk about, we definitely aired out some troubles, and I think everybody's better for it.
Yeah, and Titans, whoever's on Vrabel, whoever, if anyone's walking this, I know you're not, but who knows? Maybe we'll have an impact on what happens in the offseason or the next few games.
One would hope. Mama Amy, I'm talking to you. You know what to do.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
But of course, Max, definitely want to make sure you get a shout out to all the fans. Let them know where to find you on your social media platforms.
Yeah. So again, I'm on Titan Size again. If you search my name, Max Greenberg Titan Size, you'll find all my articles. Again, follow me on Twitter, Max Greenberg 176. And again, I also, I know this is a football podcast, but I also write for Predlines of the Fanside Network. Look, my name is Max Greenberg Predlines. I'm mainly on Twitter. I'm always giving takes pretty much every game. I did this past weekend for the Titans, at least live, because I was sitting there 20-degree cold, having phone on the cold does not go well at all. So, but anyway, pretty much every game I'm out there and I'm giving my takes.
And it was your birthday that game too.
No, my birthday's actually on next Saturday, this coming Saturday.
Oh, so unfortunately not what you were hoping for maybe an early birthday gift. So
what are you gonna do?
I mean, the Dallas game's in play, so we'll see.
Yep, for sure.
But once again, Max, thank you for joining us on the show. And don't forget, guys, we are a part of the Titan Upload Network as well. So don't forget to follow all our other great content creators on the show as well, from Brian Johannes, Titan Upload, Titan for Life, Ryan Harris of the Jump Pass Podcast, and, of course, Titan Rossi. We are the Titan Upload Network, and we continue to find information and content for you, the fans, because that's what we do best. So once again, everybody, thank you for joining us on the show tonight. A special thanks to Max Greenberg from Titan Size for joining me again. You all were great. We will be back this Thursday to break down Thursday night football. I'll try and stay sober, but I'm not going to promise anything.
I may not either.
Everybody have a great night. Enjoy Monday Night Football. I'm Michael Bishop at the Power Hour. Take care and tighten up.
See you guys.
Thank you for watching this live presentation of the Titan Upload Network.